Many of you have probably been to a hockey game before and seen that big crushing hit or a fight. And that usually is a fan's favorite part of the game that they go to. And I'd like to point out that that is a completely unnecessary thing needed in the game of hockey. Now, I've played hockey for 12, 13 years now, and I've seen my fair share of fights in the game, and I've even been in a few myself. Now, as a player and a referee, I have seen over the years that it is completely unnecessary, and it is just a tactic to get people to like the game of hockey and just to sell more tickets. Now, I've seen many people get injured by fighting, and there's three main problems. Number one, obviously, the injuries. Number two, it slows down the game and it just kind of ruins the flow. And number three, it's just a bad example for kids, and it's not something they should be looking up to. Now, as I said, problem number one, injuries. Hockey's already very dangerous. You got skates on, very sharp objects. You got a bunch of different pads. You're going at high speeds. And there's already a very high risk of injury just playing the game itself. Now, if you add fighting in, that can easily add to more injuries. Now, I'll show you here. This is a typical player helmet from ages, from when you start around 3, 4 years old until you're about 19, 20 in college. And if you get in a fight with this, most people will keep the gloves on just so they don't hit their knuckles off the cage. But if they just decide to take their gloves off, you'll get a lot of bruised knuckles, broken hands. And even though this is very sturdy, even your head can have injuries from the blows landing, and you can get head trauma, stuff like that, if you're fighting for long enough. Now, another thing, people that are at risk are refs. Now, the refs wear these helmets here in youth hockey, and even pro hockey. They wear these helmets here, and it only covers from the nose up. So if you're hopping in to stop a fight, the players aren't just going to stop. They're going to keep going. They're going to be angry. All that adrenaline's going to be going. They're going to keep swinging. Now, the ref can easily get hit in the face and get hurt just as much as the player can, and it's just a bad situation for everyone. Now, as you can see here, actually, there's a little crack in my helmet from trying to break up an altercation, and it could have been a lot worse, but you can see the crack there. So I've been in many games where I've seen fights, and sometimes it can ruin the game itself. One of my buddies actually got in a fight, and an ambulance had to get called because he fought and he actually knocked out the other player. Now, this obviously isn't the intention of fighting, but it ended up in about a 30, 45-minute delay. Ambulance had to come get the kid off, and it's a terrible situation, and nobody's really at fault. They're both fighting. It shouldn't happen out there on the ice, and it's really it puts everybody in a tough spot. Number two, it slows down the play. It slows down the flow of the game. So hockey is a sport where it takes a little while, like most sports, it takes a while to get into the flow of the game. You'll see this in basketball, football, soccer. You get used to it. So once you settle in to the game, you're going to be more comfortable, and then boom, a fight breaks out, and you're sitting there, and you're just watching the fight, and there's only 2 people involved in the fight, so that leaves about 20 to 30 other players sitting there in the cold, watching the fight, and it slows down the whole game. So what you get there is the 2 players are in the spotlight, everybody else is losing the momentum that they had before, and it's just bad for both sides. Now, players in hockey will be on a set of lines. There's 3 people per line, and there's usually about 4 lines. If one of these players gets in a fight, that leaves 2 players left on that line, and that line can no longer go out and play. So it's a selfish act also, because you're taking away from your line mates who would like to go out on the ice also, but can't because you're in the penalty box serving a certain amount of time that you need to be in there. It's like I said, it's selfish, and it ruins the momentum of the game, and it's just not needed. Number 3, and one of the bigger ones for me also, I've seen it from a player standpoint and a reffing standpoint. It's a bad example for younger kids. Now, if you're on TV and you're 8, 9 years old, and you see your favorite player get into a fight, you're gonna think, oh, I really want to get into a fight too and be just like my favorite player that I look up to. And even at younger levels, if you see a high school player on your school's high school team get in a fight, you look up to them. And it's something that the kids will think is cool. And from my standpoint, I don't think that that's very cool. I think it would be much better if you could get, a very talented play or nice passing or a nice goal, and they could look up to that and try to aspire to be better at the skill aspect and the hockey aspect of the game, and not quite the violence and that side of things. It would just make, from the ground up, it would make younger players, turn into better hockey players and not trying to be the enforcer out there getting in fights and having big hits. So the solutions I have to this, now there's different penalties for fighting at different levels. If you're in high school or travel, you're going to get suspended 1 game, which is pretty heavy. Players like to play and they don't want to get suspended, so you don't see the fights as much at that level, although sometimes the adrenaline's flowing and you still get those occasional fights, and it's not too good. But at the college and pro level, it'll be more of a theatrical, like almost a center of attention. Everybody's watching you. You take off your gloves, your helmet, you're throwing punches, people are getting hurt. But what they get 5 minutes, and then they can come right back out and play. So what I think needs to happen is they need to get heavier penalty minutes, maybe a 10, 15-minute penalty, and that'll deter them from getting in as many fights. You could also fine the players. Nobody likes to lose money. That would affect their checkbooks, and it would stop them from getting in fights if they were supposed to pay money and sit for longer, affecting their team, being selfish for getting in a fight. Now, the one thing that I think would be more beneficial than fines is just suspensions. People like playing. People like the money. A lot of people like also playing. And when they see their team out there playing without them, that's really kind of a shot. And you really would like to be out there with them. So some benefits of more harsh punishments for fighting. It'd be a safer environment from the ground up, as I said. At the pro level, they can kind of take care of themselves. They can protect themselves. If they want to get in the occasional fight, so be it. I would prefer they didn't, but I can't control that. But if at the younger levels, I think that more harsh punishments, a couple of game suspension, that would deter them from fighting, and that would lead to more skilled play, a safer hockey environment where the only injuries at risk are from the actual play itself. There's no need to jeopardize a player's life, or even just their playing careers by getting in a fight on top of the hockey itself. So I think this would cut down on the need for teams to also have enforcers, the player that's out there getting paid just to go hurt someone or fight someone or hit someone. Now, younger teams don't have this. Pros will have this. And I think that is also not needed. I think the skill is the most important part, and fighting is just not needed. So from a fan aspect, I'd like to ask you, if there was no fights and the product was better, the hockey, the game itself, the skill was better, would you still go and enjoy the game just as much as any other time? And if the answer to that is no, you want to see the violence, that's fine. But I'd like you, next time you're at a hockey game or you're watching on TV, I'd really like you to think about, is this violence and fighting needed? And in my personal opinion, I really do not think that fighting should be in hockey.